This question asks you to write a proof for the following. I'm going to choose to write this as a two-column proof, but you could choose to write it in any other way if you'd like to. So something I want you to notice is that there's two givens in here, which means your proof, when you're writing it, should also have two givens. Make sure you start with the correct format. You need to have either statements and reasons labeled or claims and evidence, something like that. You also need to have numbers. These are just like the little nitty-gritty things of what you need to have your proof start out looking like. So that's the first thing. I'm going to copy down both givens. Some of you forgot to write down both givens. Just for good measure, I'll write them in two separate steps. So segment EF is congruent to segment JH, and I'll say that they're both given. So this should be how you start any of your proofs. Next thing, I'm going to label what they're telling me in this diagram. So the first thing they told me, angle FEG, which is this one over here, is congruent to angle HJG, which is this one over here. So that's already marked for you. The second given is segment EF. So this segment over here is congruent to segment JH. So because those are the only two givens given to you, you have to go one step further. So if you recall, there are two different options for going one step further from just looking at the diagram. You could either be looking at reflexive property or vertical angles. Reflexive property will be if your two triangles are sharing an entire segment or side, and then vertical angles would be if they're sharing like a point, and then they're kind of creating an X at that point. So I want you to realize because these two triangles meet at just this one spot, angle or point G, it's not going to be reflexive property. Reflexive property would look more like if they were attached using like this entire segment, okay? Which means I should see some vertical angles, happens to be this one. FYI, this is not the only way to approach this problem. There is actually a lot of other ways, but I think this one's probably the easiest. So I have to use three letters to describe these angles, otherwise I won't know what angle G you're talking about. So if I go F, then G, then E, angle FGE is congruent to, you have to make sure the letters match the order in which I started the letters in the first triangle. So if I started with F, then a G, and then E, look at this statement. F is my first, G, then E. So I went first letter, third letter, second letter. So in this last one, I have to go first letter, which is H, third letter, G, and then second letter, which is J. So these are the angles. And you'll say if two angles are vertical, then they are congruent. So once you have that written down, I'm going to start labeling like what you actually have going on in your picture to see, is this enough to prove my triangles are congruent? I'm going to list out the 5 ways to prove triangles are congruent. Again, this is on your proof reason sheet, so don't make them up. But these are the 5 different ways. And let's see which ones we have going on here. So this at angle G is an angle, so I'm putting an A. At angle E is an angle, and this is on segment EF, so this is a side. So if I'm just focusing on this left triangle over here, I have 2 A's and 1 S, which means I can get rid of a lot of these options. 2 A's, 1 S are only these 2 bottoms, right? But if I read it in this direction, it will kind of tell you which one it is. So I'm going to say my last proof step is that the triangles are congruent. So I'll just copy over what it asks me to prove, triangles congruent. And then your last proof reason is going to be why. So we're going to say if angle, side, then the triangles are congruent. Okay, notice this is not an angle, side, angle, at least what I have currently in this picture, just because the side I have right now isn't given to you in between the 2 angles. Okay, but just also realize that sometimes you can do this problem another way. You just have to go through parallel lines. Okay.